How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Lab Podcast. And today our special guest is Parker Curtis from Homegrown Cannabis Co. How are you doing today, Parker?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We just recently had Nate Hammer on the show. It was a great experience having him, and you work with him.
Yeah. You had him on very recently. Huh?
Totally. How was that experience working with him?
You know, it's I was a home grower myself and was growing in my spare room for about 10 years. And so kind of working in dispensaries and then finally for Homegrown.
Yeah.
I didn't work in media to begin with there. And so I've been kind of, my role has been expanding and developing. So I think I've been working with Nate now for about 5 years. So yeah, it's I get to rub elbows with all kinds of cool people in the industry, and it's been a great time.
Well, this industry is so community based. Working in this industry, I don't feel like we're working with celebrities, even though some of these guys are big names, but a lot of them don't have egos. Some of them do, some of them don't. But a lot of great people.
Yeah. It's I agree with that. I'm not as in the scene as some other people. So I'll go to these events and I'm meeting people and hearing about them for the first time. And some people get a little offended you haven't heard of them before, but a lot of really great people you get to meet in passing. And then I find out who they are, after doing some research.
Yeah, if it's Mike Tyson, that's one thing. But guys in the cannabis scene, it's like we're tomato farmers, potato farmers. I think we're not special. In my opinion, we're special in our own right for the stuff that we're doing, but as individuals, we're just part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, well, I'm more comfortable getting my hands dirty, transplanting stuff, building things, and I do like to teach as well. So I'm trying to find my niche in the space,
Yeah.
And so we get to tour a lot of really huge, really nice facilities. I mean, you got a great thing going on here, but I was likening it to painting and drawing. When you're starting out sketching, you might throw some of your sketches in the trash, but and you can look to somebody that's a master painter. Somebody that's got this perfect portrait, and it can almost be discouraging, right?
Right.
And the thing that you hear a lot of times with Instagram, you just see the final beautiful finished product, and you don't necessarily see all the nitty gritty of the problems along the way. So since I started working with Nate, we did a greenhouse, and that was my first time growing outdoors. And, it's a totally different skill set.
Agreed.
I see bugs out there that I've never seen in my life every time I go out there. And
there's beneficial bugs. There's all kinds of, insects and things for sure.
Yeah. We had, there's a guy, Matt Gates, he's a Sink Angel on Instagram, and he's a bug expert, cannabis IPM specialist, and we'll have him over and just walk and talk. And, there's plenty to find out there. It's, growing outdoors is, every year has been different for me. It's like a couple of years ago, we got hit really hard with caterpillars. And
I hate tomato hornworms. They are the worst.
They get huge too. They don't affect cannabis too much, but
they do.
Really,
they totally fuck you. I've had the worst years of my life because of tomato hornworms, especially here in the Bay Area. And the thing is if you don't get them early enough, they'll do severe damage and they'll eat on the inside. You'll end up getting botrytis, right? So
you get like a secondary infection because they'll burrow. They'll defecate.
Not only they're eating your buds, but then your plant gets infected and you're like looking for them and then the cola breaks off in your hand and you have all this gray mold on the inside. It's like, it can be a nightmare.
Well, it gets a little tough to show because you don't necessarily want to broadcast that, but those are problems that a lot of people deal with. And so when you look out and you just see the pretty finished buds, and you don't necessarily see that most people have to deal with that. And so it's always the biggest, best looking bud too. You'll go out the next day and that thing is just wilted over. And
it's a lot of times it's the loudest plant too. So it's like the one that you love the most, and then it just gets attacked. And then you have to go, there's some people that have nets for them. Right. There's all kinds of preventative things you can do. Some people use BT as a preventative. Parasitic wasps are another one.
Yeah.
But it's a difficult thing to deal with. And then also, you get the headlamp. So you get the headlamp, you go out before the sun rises, you look for the snail trails, basically. Looks like your plant's been to a strip club.
I've been using a UV light too. And they tend to come out on a full moon. And so the UV light, you can spot either the damage or the actual caterpillars. But some of the strategies, like with the BT, like when I got hit really hard, it was when I was spraying the most BT, and you'd get these things burrowed into the center stalks. And so you can douse these plants as much as you want, and I couldn't get rid of them. You're manually picking them off. So at this point, I have a little garden planted just outside of my greenhouse where I try to attract some of those predatory species, and I'll throw a couple of kind of sacrificial plants out that way. So eat them up, just don't get in the greenhouse. And it seemed to have helped a little bit, but yeah, it's just kind of part of growing outdoors.
For sure. And there's so many things like that. And there's so many more variables growing outdoors or in greenhouses than there is indoors. And each season from one year to the next can be completely different. You get a different amount of rain, a different amount of light, temperature swings. All these things can change.
Yeah. And, Nate was talking about some of those plants that I had, and they were, I think, about 7.5 feet tall. And they started getting over my fence line and catching light from neighbors, backyard porch lights and stuff like that. And all these things that I'm able to control in an indoor setting where, I don't have light leaks. I can mess with the temperature and humidity outdoors. You're just kind of at the mercy of the elements.
Yeah. And you know what? I love indoor weed. I love smoking really good quality indoor flower. I love that. But every time winter rolls around, the late fall, winter with all this good flower, I love. We just had an event not so long ago, Terpene, and I saw the most amazing collections of sativas that I'd ever, in one place in California, especially. Maybe in Europe you see more, right? But all these amazing flowers, all these really pungent flowers. And I love smoking the pungent stuff. I love it when it burns my nose, and you don't get that as much with indoor, especially these days. You will find some stuff, but like especially those pungent, nose burning, loud thiols, right? We get the skunks, we get the ammonia, a little bit of ammonia I saw, and just like those nose burning, almost chemical smells. Really good stuff.
Yeah, we did a series up at Swami's place, and you can see that, especially for outdoor, location plays a big part in it. Like, up there where the humidity and temperature is just right, you get the fog rolling in, and it seems we're down where I am. I'm in San Diego, and we've had a really humid couple of last years, and it's listening to Swami talk about all that with all the different terpenes that are produced with natural sunlight. The lights have gotten a lot better now, but there is something to that. It's a bummer that the market doesn't always support that, because it's a big accomplishment to pull down a harvest outdoors.
Well, and from one microclimate to the next, your plant can perform completely different. And a lot of people don't understand that white thorn rose grown on Johnny's farm at Huckleberry Hill Farms versus Ridgeline, you can get a different expression of the same plant. And they're close to each other. But one ridge to the next, you can get different environments and with different results for the flower.
Yeah, and we'll have we have a lot of new states just going legal, and with homegrown, we're shipping seeds all across the U.S. And so we give growers, people that are brand new to it in places like Maine and the Midwest, maybe a bit north, where they have a short growing season, and they always have questions like, what's the best plant for this and that, and it's I wrote an article about that, kind of explaining it, because it's, or at least from my perspective, right? We get a lot of indoor growers, tent growers, people kind of have to make use of the space that they have. So it's like the plants can be grown anywhere. They're hardy, they want to live, but if you're up north, you want something with a shorter flowering time. It tends to be indica or an auto flower, but and the same thing with some of these tents and stuff. You might be limited on space, but if you apply this, the right techniques, like with training, certain trimming techniques, you can make it work with any cultivar that you really want. Like it's about finding the right plant that works for you, and then finding out a way to grow it. There's
a lot of right ways and there's a lot of wrong ways to do it, and it's just finding your own path. And that's the beauty of it, is like learning how to grow. You back in the day, you really needed a mentor. I feel like most people weren't just like, oh, I know how to grow cannabis, or I just get in my backyard, put it in my backyard, I get good results, buy some seeds. Now with technology and the internet, if you're really passionate about it, you can watch podcasts, you can watch videos on YouTube and really learn how to grow.
Yeah, it used to be, very protected information, kind of locked down. I mean, you could go read on the forums or you could have a buddy teach you, but it used to be, even going to the hydro stores, you had to,
I've been around since before they had internet. I was cultivating, so.
Yeah, you have to find somebody and show you the way. Some of these hydros, you have to go talk about, I want to grow tomatoes. Yeah, exactly.
And if you said weed or cannabis or they're kicking you out of the store.
Well, there used to be feds that would sit at these hydro stores and follow people home and stuff. So
literally, yeah. And I mean, they were trying to get store owners to turn on their fucking customers and stuff like that. And I mean, it was a really strange world, and people went to prison for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I started growing in 2010 or 2011.
Yeah.
So, we would bring in our supplies at night, bringing in my hydro tables, all my rock wools, and we would wait till the sun came down and you're throwing away your spent material offsite, like finding a dumpster, doing it very secretively because I had friends getting their doors kicked down. And so kind of, and I talked to you earlier, I worked in some dispensaries. I actually took back our first recreational patient. Yeah. And so kind of being in it and when it was full black market to transitioning into recreational. And now I am, we're making videos showing people how to grow. And it's been quite the development. It's interesting to kind of be along for the ride.
Yeah. Well, San Diego is a fun place. I worked in Fallbrook for a little while, which is San Diego County.
Yeah.
But like the year after I was there, they had a 120-degree day, and I heard the seeds they were making seeds in the field, hemp seeds, and they were popping like popcorn. So it's got some interesting climate issues.
Yeah, I'm south of downtown San Diego. It's like a little bit. It's across the bay from Coronado.
Yeah.
So I have a small bubble. That's where I've lived my whole life, and there's challenge. I mean, you go up north where you have ideal conditions, and as you find out with growing cannabis, you rarely have ideal conditions. You have to roll with the punches. You have to MacGyver things, and it's all about problem solving. And
life is all about problem solving, though. So if you're a good problem solver, you can grow good cannabis for sure.
Yeah, it's like setting up a grow. You have to be good at doing drywall, plumbing, sourcing all these things.
Literally back in the day when it was super illegal, you had to do all that stuff. You had to be an electrician, a carpenter, you had to figure stuff out on your own. And we MacGyvered the shit out of stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not the safest ways either, but it was the only way we knew how to do it without having help where we could potentially get in trouble.
Yeah, and that's like we talked about, kind of finding my space in the industry. That's still my life right now. I'll do all that stuff myself. I was growing in my spare room, and I've moved to a 10 by 20 shed. So I've converted that all into a grow room. I did insulation, drywall. I did concrete floors and waterproofed it. And so we've done videos kind of renovating that and setting it up for a grow. And it is nice getting into these huge facilities and seeing everything just immaculate, like hospital quality.
Right.
But for the home grower, it's how do I get this done? Where do I go for this? And because even when I'm fixing a problem, like trying to put together a piece of furniture I got, you'll end up YouTubing it, right? You'll end up looking for somebody, like an instructional video on YouTube showing you how to do it.
Yeah.
And so I tend to like that more. My background before I got into cannabis was in the medical field. So I was an x-ray tech and a phlebotomist, and we would teach students on site. And so it kind of, I was hiding the fact that I was growing while I was drug testing people at work and then going home and harvesting.
Yeah.
So, going from instructing students in the field to, kind of making instructional videos with how to grow weed, it seems to have fallen in line well, and I'm enjoying it.
Good stuff. And so you are also, I've heard, a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. So, funny enough, I was more afraid about being, kind of caught and shunned by the family than being caught by the law.
Yeah.
So, the friends and family involved in that didn't look too kindly on that. You weren't supposed to smoke weed. You weren't supposed to have long hair, no facial hair even.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so
you went in the other direction on that one.
A little bit. And so, and I got my own place and started growing, and, family kind of distanced themselves from me. And then my dad came down with cancer. And, they was always very, very against it. And so we started making RSO and different extracts for different applications. And, it's towards the end, I was smoking weed with him and making medicine for him from my own garden.
Right.
And so to see it kind of come full circle and finally have the appreciation for and to produce your own medicine and help others, it was a little vindicating. The circumstances were a bit sad, but it was a powerful way to kind of close that chapter, get some recognition finally.
Yeah, it's great when your parents can recognize what you're doing is positive or positive, it has positive impact in the world. I think it took my parents a while to come to that conclusion. I told them I was growing when I was younger. They come home and visit, and I had to tell my dad, I got plants in the garage. Oh, you got plants in the garage? No, I got plants in the garage. You're coming home. I got to let you know I have plants in the garage. And, because this is in the 90s too. So in the 90s, it was much more dangerous, much more illegal.
Yeah.
And, but I feel like my parents are proud of me now and the direction I've gone, especially with cannabis. And I think they recognize that it makes the world a better place. And the stigma for so long, they demonized cannabis, and it was the general thought that cannabis was bad, marijuana was bad, and
dope,
right?
It's drugs.
It's like reefer madness, and then pushing that agenda for a long time. And really, we've kind of done a 180 for the most part. I think more than half of the people in the United States, especially, are pro medical cannabis, recreational, whatever. But I feel like it's hard to argue that cannabis isn't beneficial, and people shouldn't be able to use it as medicine if they choose.
Yeah, have like I was telling you earlier. So in the medical field, it was kind of started in 2007 with that, and that was I don't know if it was the peak, but it was definitely deep into the kind of over prescribing of opioids, and you'd watch patients totally spiral with it, and they would the doctors would send them home with buckets of pills, and you'd see these people just take a nosedive with it. And if they had another option, and if it wasn't stigmatized, some of those people might be alive today. And it's kind of sad to see, but watching the industry kind of unfold and the stigma kind of being shed from that is quite special.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy they're not putting as many people in prison for cannabis. It's like on a federal level, we need to change stuff, but I think there's definitely less people going to prison for cannabis. Richard DeLisi, 32 years on a 98-year sentence. We talk about him a lot on my show. I love his story. I love being able to share his story, the fact that he's out now. And you're working on a project.
Yeah, well, just last week we were out at MJ BizCon with 40 Ton representing Richard DeLisi, and he's got quite the story. And it's people like that have had to sacrifice that we can all benefit from it, and it's tragic. And I've had friends get locked up as well, and it's now we're sitting across the table talking about weed, smoking about weed, and showing people how to grow weed, and you're always standing on the shoulders of giants to get where you are.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole industry is on the shoulders of giants. If you look at all these breeders, so-called breeders and seed producers and people that are working with genetics, we're all on the shoulders of giants. And these guys that did it before us, and there was people that did it before them. And, some of these guys went and did some stuff that was super dangerous and brought this stuff over here and did some really amazing foundational breeding in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even stuff today, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's, I think I've been growing for 15 years now, so it was at the tail end of the black market. But yeah, some of these stories you hear, you're like, oh my gosh. But a lot of the people just getting into it now aren't ever going to know a time like that. It's like after alcohol prohibition,
totally.
Right?
And we have short memories too, and even the people that experienced it, they may not have experienced it at that level, but people that were never in the industry when it was really illegal never understand. Their friends getting murdered or people going to prison for a plant. And we're talking about a plant that makes the world a better place.
Right. I mean, you'd get people driving down from Humboldt in U-Hauls, and, they're risking the next couple of decades of their life. And I think that's when it was like between 48 44 or 48 to 4,500 a pound,
Yeah.
And I had to close down for about a year or so after it went legal. So it's great that it went legal. It's great that the access is there.
Mm-hmm.
But as a grower, you're subject to the market like that. You have overhead, you have power bills, you have supplies you need to get.
Right.
And when the price drops out the bottom, you have to make some tough decisions to try to get by.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of us were used to living one harvest to the next, and you'd almost run out of money by the time, depending. But
yeah,
I was one of those people, especially early on with cannabis, where you would almost run out of money and you'd have to scrape by for a couple of weeks till your next harvest. And I wasn't one. Some of my friends went really big, and I was really afraid to go big. I was one of those guys with 8 lights in the house when some of my friends had 12 houses.
Yeah. The guy that I learned from, each brother had, I think, like a 3 or 4 bedroom house with a garage, and they had clones and mothers in the bathroom. They're sleeping in the kitchen, and every room's blown up.
Yeah.
So that was the person that I learned from, and you go through all these iterations of different styles of growing. I tried to do living soil my first run, ended up with tables and aeroponics and all these different things. And it takes a while to sort through some of those because you research and there's so much information out there, it can almost be overwhelming.
Right.
So you kind of, having a mentor, having somebody guide you and show you what has worked for them and kind of building off of that and perfecting it. That lesson took me years to learn.
Yeah, I was soil for the longest time, and now I use cocoa, but I also love smoking soil. And I also did soil in my backyards at house, but we have a sterile facility, right? So like as sterile as possible. So we're really trying to combat pests, fungal pathogens, stuff like that. Start clean, stay clean is our motto. We use rock wool in our nursery. We use cocoa for pheno hunting. But I do love the way soil tastes.
Same. That's the nice thing about having the space that I have. I have, we'll do a bit of soil, a bit of rock wool, a bit of cocoa, and kind of showcase some of these different styles and help people find what works for them. But for my indoor, I've done pretty much the same. I'll start in rock wool. I'll transfer to cocoa. So I can keep my lines clear. I'll run mineral-based nutrients. So it keeps all those drippers clear, and then I can still add my inoculants and my organic
beneficials and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, but I'll hand water or hand apply all that so it doesn't get in the lines or anything.
I'm the same way. We flush hand water.
Nice.
But at scale, it's really difficult to do. And I think that's the hard part. Hand watering anything at scale is difficult to do. But I find that putting beneficials in, that they're going to clog your lines a lot of times. So you can't really run them through your lines. And so hand watering, our last week, in cocoa, we flush, and it's all hand water flush once a day, and we go pretty heavy. But that creates an amazing product.
Right.
And I love cocoa. I use Kaya cocoa right now, but I've used Charcoal, Canna, and gotten great results with both those as well. And then nutrients, I've tried everything, and I like a bunch of different.
What have you settled on?
Right now we're using United, and I'm a big fan of United and their nutrients. I love the end product really is the best in my opinion that I've seen. But I've used Athena, and I've used Cutting Edge, and I've used Front Row.
I've been thinking about using them. I talked to
Front
one of their
really
guys.
Good. Yeah, it's really good. There's so many good ones out there. Cutting Edge, I love John and Sean. I think they have a great product, and I think the flower comes out really amazing. And there's so many, Canna is a great company. I work with Canna. So I work with Canna on advertising. I use Canna for my clones. I have a nutrient mix. I use Canna. They have Canna Start. It's really great. And I like it because before I was using just United or Cutting Edge or whatever. I basically take 3 EC. I'd cut it down to 1.5. And I just use a less concentrated dose. But the problem with that is then the micros, like you're getting half the micros. Really what you want is more micros. And so you want full strength micros with a lower EC. And so that's why I use that product. And I feel like there's going to be more products out like that, but I really like that special product right now.
Yeah, it's like you can walk into the hydro store and it gets a little overwhelming, right? You walk down these aisles and there's just endless options, all these different lines that you maybe haven't heard of.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I'll jump around, I'll get maybe some silica from one line that's maybe a bit more affordable, but for the most part, I try to keep it simple because there's lines that you can customize every little thing. And for me personally, I'd rather kind of work with a formula and tweak that a bit rather than having all these different variables that are endlessly changeable.
14 years ago, I used to use 18 different things, and I was also using soil too, but I used 18 different things. Dark Energy, one of my favorite products of all time. It's a sea kelp product, but we used to use Liquid Karma, and then I used Flora Nova and Botanicare together. Yeah, and I do like simplicity. I like simplicity, and I like being able to get repeated results. And but also I have an R&D facility. What we do is R&D. We're not growing flower for sale. We're testing stuff. I'm literally doing pheno hunting when I'm growing flower. It's strictly pheno hunting and R&D. So we test one nutrient line against another. We test one light against another light. We test under canopy versus light lift versus the control. And
well, you have to kind of standardize certain things to cut out the variables that you don't want to test so you can actually see the results of what you do want to test.
Right. And we usually test one thing at a time. So we only have one variable that we change, whether it's soil versus cocoa or, the new one is really the light lift. So we got the horizon light lift versus the under canopy versus them together. And then we have the control that has none. It just has the standard light as standard height. And we're looking for yield potential. We're looking for cannabinoid improvement, terpene improvement, all these things. We're comparing terpenes versus cannabinoids. And then we have COAs where we're running the same cultivar. So we're really going to be able to go, okay, this is better for this reason. And it's very scientific. I feel like that's the way to do it.
Well, you have the right space to get some dependable results with that.
Yeah. And it's, at the end of the day, so the reason I like R&D for myself is because I'm a genetics guy, right? We sell seeds, we sell clones, we sell germplasm. If I can empower my customers and the people that buy our genetics to get better results, they're going to want to rely on me in the future. So it's not going to be just a transactional relationship. It's going to be more of a long-term relationship. And I like those kind of relationships a lot more than, oh, here, just buy my seeds. It's like, oh yeah, so you bought those genetics last year. Well, look at what I found out about this. We can get better results with under canopy. If you can afford the lights, you have the electricity for it. You can get under canopy, and basically we're doing this, this, and this, and you're going to get this type of an improvement on your yield.
Yeah, well, I think things like that are what is going to set companies apart. Like with Homegrown, that's what I try to do. I try to interface with customers as often as I can. I get all kinds of people reaching out for advice, sending me pictures of their plants with a myriad of questions. And, it's you have to have done it before and maybe even failed before to identify some of those problems and be able to offer some type of constructive help.
Well, making mistakes is one of the best ways to learn. I feel like the some of the smartest people and the people that are doing it the best have made the most mistakes. I've learned from my mistakes. I made tons of mistakes over the years. It's cultivation, everything, business mistakes, business partners.
Right.
Learning from my mistakes is, one of the best ways I've learned things. I've learned as much on what to do as what not to do, and also learning from other people. Some of my friends have made crazy mistakes where I'm like, oh, I don't ever want to do that. I'm glad they made that mistake.
Yeah, there's some pitfall. I mean, just like in any industry, any field, there's some pitfalls and there's some personalities that kind of are archetypal. They'll always be there no matter what aspect you're in, whether it's cannabis or any other form of business. But, cannabis, it seems like there's enough space for everybody, and it should be, this overall positive and uplifting thing. And,
right.
Sometimes it can be a bit of a minefield, try to navigate some of the interpersonal relationships, but
they're out there in every industry, though.
Oh, exactly.
Ego is out there everywhere. And, the plant is supposed to help with the ego. So one of those things.
Yeah, just take a grandma RSO and see how your ego is.
Yeah, exactly. It'll really put your ego in check. And that's the beauty of the plant. And it kind of tunes us in, which is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, it should just be this. I think kind of where the culture started with it is well, to a degree, but sharing, communal, uplifting.
Yeah.
And meeting people like you, it's nice to see that sentiment is shared and still alive.
Yeah. So if you had some advice for people learning, you got any tips or tricks on growing? I mean, I'm sure you get to experience so many cool things. Let's share some tips on cultivation with the crowd.
Yeah. So for me personally, I just kind of, a lot of times I'll use things I have laying around my house, like instead of buying a reservoir, I pulled an extra trash can back there. I'm running that. It's about a 75, 100 gallon or something. So, sometimes you'll talk to people and they'll give you a full list of things that you need to get before you even think about growing. And, sometimes that can tally $5,000+ if you look at everything somebody tells you need to grow.
Yeah.
But realistically, you can grow with probably things that you have laying around your house right now. And so all these new customers just getting into the field or, getting into growing for the first time, it's easy to get discouraged. And there's never that
distracted and discouraged.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And, if you're going to wait and push it off to the next season to get started, that's not necessarily going to help you. Like you were saying, failing and building upon those experiences is important.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about growing, and I'll tell people, you don't even need to be consuming cannabis to appreciate the process of growing it. Like I'm not people that grow roses aren't smoking them, but they grow them because
most of them.
Yeah, they're beautiful to grow, and you can appreciate the flowers on them.
Right.
And so what I love about my role with Homegrown, I get to share seeds with people. I get to give advice to people and encourage people to get into growing for their very first time.
I do love a good whitethorn rose, and I love rosewater terps.
Those terps.
Rosewater terps are my favorite terps, actually. If you were to say, what's your favorite terps? I love rosewater. Like if it was to be one flavor profile, like I love so many different things, but rosewater, Skittles, like that's a great combo.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Are you going to get that in the breeding?
I love
the
breeding mix? Yeah, we've been chasing that for a while. There's a long story there, but that's something we've been chasing. My friend Tim Humiston and Kyle from Canna Organics had this rosewater Skittles that was it was a creme rosé times Skittles, and it was rosewater terps. It was the best. And then that was from the initial seed run, and then it changed. And then I've been chasing those terps ever since, and I'm going to find them again.
Well, that's the nice thing about sharing. I know there's a couple of strains down in my neck of the woods, like Bull Rider, right? Mm-hmm. So, the more, you don't want to give it to everybody, but you certainly want to share it enough to where if you lose it, you can possibly get it back from a friend. But,
right.
That was one of those strains. I'll see the name around, but that strain was lost. And it was just this, it's kind of like Blue Dream or something, right? It's once you've grown it and smelled it and smoked it, you'll never not be able to identify that.
Oh, Afghani Bull Rider.
Yeah. So you could smell somebody smoking that 10 years later and you'll know exactly what it is. It'll bring you back to this. It's like listening to a song you haven't heard in years. It'll bring you back to this moment in time. And you're like, I know what that is. I've smelled that before.
That's another debatable San Diego, NorCal thing. There's definitely a San Diego. There's Cat Piss Tom and his cat piss from San Diego. And I believe there's a different one from the Bay. But it's one of those unmistakable things. For me, it's like cat piss. I know exactly what it smells like. I haven't smelled it in years, and I can't wait till I get to smell it again. Yeah. But it's unmistakable. And same thing with rosewater terps.
Yeah, they stick with you. They imprint on you, and you're like, I know exactly what that is. Or even if you come across a hybrid that has that mixed in.
Oh yeah, lamb's bread is another one. I'm like, oh, fucking lamb's bread. I love that. I love that aroma.
Like when you just start out, there's so many different cultivars, but once you start kind of experiencing some of those and smelling them and smoking them, you'll surprise yourself at how you're able to identify some of those. When you look at new crosses and stuff, you're like, that smells like this. They'll be like, hey, that's quite the guess. That's actually one of its parents.
Yeah. Well, and it goes. You can look at food like that. It's collecting data points over time. You want to be a really good breeder. You want to be a really good chef. Collect a lot of data points by trying different things, experiencing different things, and store those in the back of your mind. And then you revisit them. They almost become nostalgic. I have smells from childhood. My mother was a baker, so she had a bakery and she used to bake bread, and I get nostalgic when I smell certain smells. Coriander. When people bake, they're baking with coriander. Like that's just, it's like
brings
one of those things. It brings me back to childhood. Candy canes. We used to do gingerbread houses. So when I smell ginger, I have a genetic that has gingerbread on the nose, like heavy gingerbread.
That's a keeper.
And then when I tell people, they're like, "Oh my God, it's ginger." I've never smelled gingerbread on cannabis, and it's like, yeah, I've seen it before too, but this is the strongest I've seen it.
Well, it's so responsive. You get all these terp profiles that you wouldn't think a plant will be able to produce. And you're like, smell this. This smells like,
exactly like fried chicken or exactly like this. And there's so many things. The plant is so diverse and there's so many different things that you can go in these different directions. And green tea, you can go all these savory things to all these dessert strains, to all these fruits, tropical fruits even too. It's like, it's wild when you get into these guavas and these mangoes.
Well, I wonder how much is the power of suggestion versus, because some of them they'll tell you what it is and you'll smell it and you're like, this smells exactly like what you just described. And it's a little trippy.
Well, coming from someone who has experience with food and with flavor profiles, there's a lot of that's real. It's not just the power of suggestion. Right. I pick up these notes and I feel like, we study terpenes and now flavorants. That's another. Abstracts Tech did a bunch of white papers. They had white papers published 2024 that talk about flavorants, sulfur-based compounds. We call them thiols as well. And they contribute heavily to the aroma. Now it's a flavor molecule that's much smaller than a terpene, so it's been harder to study. But these guys have, taken it outside the box and really, from an outside the box perspective, gone in, did scientific studies, and now we can start having these conversations. It's not just about terpenes.
Well, and all those molecules, they modulate the high as well.
Right.
So, like you were talking to Nate about beers and stuff, so, like hops is a cousin. Yeah.
Hoppy beers.
One of the predominant terpenes in hops is myrcene, right? Yeah. And, you drink a Corona versus a heavy IPA, you get a little tired, right? I mean, aside from just the alcohol. Yeah. So it's all that myrcene in there that you're intaking. And so you can kind of see that, the myrcene that's in a lot of indica strains, you end up get more of that couch lock, sedated feel.
Yeah.
And so when you see how some of these, and even like limonene, right? It's it kind of wakes you up. It's a bit more vibrant. And when you get that present in cannabis, a lot of times that's in sativas and it has this kind of energizing effect, kind of wakes you up.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to mention too, I was
going to ask you about that. Did you find that outside in the parking lot, or where did you get that?
I was looking for you at MJ BizCon, but I brought a bucket of these, and just like sharing strains and stuff. I've been, there's a few different plants that I've been cultivating in my garden. There's other classes of plants that are magical, that have unique properties, and
and these are fully legal. They're ornamental.
Absolutely.
In the U.S. Yeah. I see them at Home Depot for sale.
Exactly.
Yes, the San Pedro cactus is very common in the East Bay.
Yeah, once you get the eye for them, you're able to identify them. There are a bunch of species that at first glance you might think that are San Pedro.
They only have 5 sides, seven sides to a San Pedro, correct?
So that's like, they can vary. They can even vary on one column.
Oh, really?
But it's kind of like saying, oh, cannabis has this many lobes on a leaf.
Yeah.
And, it can vary. But I did bring some San Pedro, but this one is a little bit less common. This is the Peruvian torch.
Wow.
It's the Trichoceres burgessii. And, but yeah, they grow really well. So I brought a few that you can plant in your garden here, and maybe you can share with other people down the road as well.
We normally don't even let plants in the building. No one's allowed to bring fresh fruit in. So you snuck by security.
Oh,
I'm gonna have to confiscate that.
You can confiscate. I'll toss it across the table too.
Yeah. No. It's okay. No, I think it's great for the podcast. Yeah, normally, just so people know, we don't let any fruits or vegetables that basically are uncooked in the building. You have some stuff in a Tupperware, whatever, for employees. But we don't allow. I
was looking for a Tupperware that would fit this, but I didn't have any luck.
I have some glass jars that might work. Yeah, that's really cool. I'll definitely put that at the house. I love cactus and watching cactus grow. It's just
they have the most beautiful flowers too. But Yeah, they tend to grow faster than any other cactus you'll plant, and it's
Really?
a nice thing to have
How many
around.
inches a year do they roughly grow?
This one's a little slower growing than the regular San Pedro. That one's like, I think anywhere from 12 to 18 inches a year once it's happy. But this one I've had growing, I got them all in my front yard. I've had this one growing for probably 12 years, and this one's never flowered. The other one flowers a couple of times a year. So
yeah.
But this one's I think this one has about 20% mescaline. So it's legal to grow, legal to own, but if you process it, it turns into a Schedule 1 substance.
Right.
Yeah, but pretty flowers, and it's nice to grow in the garden.
They're beautiful. Yeah, cactus is just amazing to watch. And I mean, I like growing everything. So I'm super into growing vegetables too. That's my main focus. Besides cannabis, I love growing tomatoes and peppers and zucchini and you name it. If you can eat it, I love growing it. It's just, I love consuming stuff that I grow, especially. That's like one of the things that excites me the most is to be able to grow a tomato, even though I don't eat a lot of tomatoes and I definitely don't eat them off season.
But they taste better. They taste better. They taste different.
A million times better.
And even cannabis, it might not be the next Cannabis Cup winner, but the fact that you grew it, you put the time and the energy into it. It tastes different to smoke your own weed that you grew.
It's pretty amazing. I love plant medicine in all its forms too, and there's so many forms that we are revisiting now that have been used for thousands of years. It's pretty wild. How Western medicine has really they basically went like monochemical. We're having this one thing that cures this one element. Where a lot of these full spectrum products like cannabis, they do a lot. They do so many things.
When I worked in the medical field, you'd get medicines like antiemetics that help with nausea and things like that. And there's always a natural option. You can eat ginger instead of waiting in a waiting room with a bunch of sick people because you're nauseous. And some people, tend to trust doctors more, and modern medicine is a wonderful thing, and there's lots of advantages to it, but there's so many problems that you can fix just with things that you can grow, things you're able to produce on your own. And you don't always just having the ability to, if you have joint pain or you're suffering from a number of ailments, cannabis covers, I think cannabis will cover more symptoms than just about anything.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to smoke it or eat it necessarily. You can make it into topicals. There's so many applications you can use for it. So to be able, and
with the least amount of side effects, right? So we can talk about stuff that cures cancer and we can talk about stuff that cures all these different things with heavy side effects with Western medicine, whereas you have minimal side effects with cannabis or with plant medicine.
Yeah, we one of my friends. He's I grew up with him. He's like my dad's age, but came down with cancer.
Yeah,
and I showed him how to make RSO on his own, and he decided to take that and monitor with his doctor. He forewent surgery or chemotherapy and was able to cure his cancer with no surgical intervention, no chemo, no radiation.
Yeah.
And I think he's been cancer-free for about 6 years now. And that's with the RSO that I had grown and showed him how to extract and stuff. So
let's take a deep dive into RSO. I would love to. I think no one's really talked about it on the show. We've filmed over 90 episodes and we haven't really talked about an RSO recipe. And I think there's a lot of curious people that watch this show that would love to hear about making RSO.
Yeah. So when I hadn't produced it prior to finding out that my dad had come down with cancer.
Yep.
So Rick Simpson uses denatured alcohol, which is not great.
Ideal.
It's poisonous, right? Like you can't drink that like an Everclear or something. So I opted
without going blind.
Right. Yeah. So when I was making it, I think it was 2014 that I was making that for him. And we started to go with, you can either use Everclear or most recently I've been using a 200 proof food grade ethanol.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with that. I would suggest doing it outside if you're able to, but you basically make like a big tea bag that you'll steep in it, right? So if I'm telling people how to make it at home, just use one of those, like a French press that you would make coffee in. And I think you blend it up, and you can usually get about maybe 3 to 4 ounces in a container like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're normally making hash, you don't want to agitate it too much. You don't want that chlorophyll to bleed through into your extracts.
Right.
But with RSO, some of those chlorophylls and some of those enzymes in the plant tissue is exactly what you're looking for.
Right.
So RSO, or whole plant extract, you're not looking for your top quality buds necessarily, although you can have those mixed in. But a lot of times it's the things that people throw away. You're processing and extracting things like the stems and the leaves and the trim. And if you wanted to take it a step further, you can also process the roots in that as well.
There's terpenes in the roots as well, as people know from watching my show.
Yeah, there's terpenes in the roots that normally people are not able to interact with because they're not dealing with those, they're not extracting those. But cannabis root, that's like an old folklore medicinal recipe. So if you were going to go that route, usually you can make it with the byproduct, the things that you would throw away.
Right.
So I'll soak it. I'll do 2 soakings for about. I'll let the material sit with like the alcohol for about 15 to 20 minutes. I'll strain that off into a pan. I'll soak it again, and you're left with this like really rich green looking extracted alcohol, and then you're just reducing it like a sauce. So if you're going to make RSO, I think in a French press like that with about 1/4 pound or so in it, and what I'll do is I'll blend it up so you powder it. It ends up looking like flour, right? You don't. It's not like making water hash where you don't want to break it up too much, so you'll powder it in a like a food processor, and then you reduce it like a sauce. And
it's like making shitty pre-rolls with the food process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think from start to finish, I can make a batch of RSO in about 2 hours or so.
Wow, that's really fast.
Yeah, and
some people do the longer process.
Yeah, I've seen, just like anything, there are some different techniques out there, and it kind of depends on how much you're scaling it.
Right.
But when you go to the dispensary, and it ends up being anywhere from $60 to $100 a gram. And if you look at our Rick Simpson's recipe or how much he prescribes to take, you end up taking about 1 gram a day.
Right.
So you start out with a grain of rice and you ramp it up kind of depending on
trying to hit that target of 1 gram a day.
Yeah. And so like my tolerance has kind of dropped out lately. And so even a grain of rice of that is...
When we're talking 1,000 milligrams, right? Not just a gram of material, you want 1,000 milligrams.
Right. And, 1,000 milligrams of RSO is much different than 1,000 milligrams of other extracts that you might take.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily translate. It's way more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can get a little tough, especially with people still trying to be functional throughout the day.
Yeah.
So what we've started to do is use CBD isolate to kind of modulate that. So you will take your dose of RSO, and then basically once you start feeling the effects, you'll take your CBD isolate, and that's going to kind of let the THC set in and start doing its thing, but allow you to still be functional.
But it also competes with those receptors, right? So that's part of the benefit. It competes with the receptors, so you don't get the extreme psychoactive effect. It mellows it down a little bit.
They'll actually unseat it. Like you were saying, it's kind of like the Narcan of cannabis. So those the CBD will actually go in and unseat that THC that is locked into those receptors, and it can actually get you unhigh.
Right.
So, and then there are some...
So dabbing CBD is a great way for that to happen right away. It's funny because I think it's
snap you out of it.
Yes, a lot of people are so high that they're scared to take a dab. But if you were to take a dab of straight CBD isolate, you would be feeling pretty amazing right after that.
Yeah. It's I think right now even a 10 milligram edible is I think that's done for me for the day. I go right to sleep. So when you start talking about RSO, there are some consumption methods too that can help to kind of modulate that. So when you ingest it, you activate the liver, and it turns into a whole nother compound with the liver getting involved to break down that substance.
Yeah.
So sublingual application. There's even, I've even seen. So my mom had helped make coconut oil based suppositories and things like that.
Yeah.
So just like when you take it sublingually, you're absorbing into the mucous membrane, you're bypassing the liver, and it doesn't affect you quite as heavily. And that would be the same thing with, anything other than ingesting it, basically.
Right.
So I've even had friends, people that I've known that, hospice kind of end of life care that have been prescribed some pretty heavy duty opioids and things. And that's just, it's just basically to knock you out. And so we've made different applications for people like that in that boat as well. And it's heavy, but it's nice to be able to help people when they really need it, because a lot of people aren't familiar with it. And so you would think with weed being as talked about and as open as it is now, most people would know a little bit, but you would be so surprised at the amount of people that I talk to that are coming in completely cold. They're in the same mindset of the last 20,
doctors
30 years.
too, especially doctors.
Right.
I think a lot of doctors, I have friends that are surgeons and they are informed, but I think there's a lot of people that are uninformed in the medical field.
Yeah, it's with the system we have, you get their hands tied. They have, when you interface with insurance companies, you have to follow the prescribed line of treatment. And so there are some people that are aware of it, but they're just not able to talk about it or prescribe it.
Yeah.
And so it gets a little discouraging. And that's part of the reason that I left it and let my licenses lapse. There are things that I miss about it, but there's also a lot that, you can see that it's not going to change, and you can see that people are still going to suffer. So I can be involved with an industry and a company where I'm able to empower people and help educate people and encourage people to use cannabis as they may.
Nice.
Yeah.
So tell me something the world doesn't know about Matt Hammer.
Oh, man. Well, he's from England, right?
Yeah. Australia.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, half of the reason I come out to these shoots with him, I bring a tool bag with zip ties and duct tape. And, before I got into the medical field, I used to work in theater doing stage management. So I'm used to setting up cameras and sound and lights. And just like with growing weed, you end up MacGyvering things and jerry-rigging things. So that's half of the reason I cruise out with him.
Sometimes it's MacGrubering, but yes, I agree.
Yeah, so I come with the zip ties and the duct tape, and we'll make a lot happen. But it's been quite an honor to work with him, and I've got to rub elbows with all kinds of famous people that I see on TV or videos and stuff, and I'll cruise around with this guy and get to hang out with him. So it's been quite the pleasure. Yeah.
And then you've got to work with Kyle Cushman as well.
Yeah. I started working with him, and I think it was a couple of months into it. And I was like, because I'm not like, I don't keep up on the industry. I'm not abreast with everything. But I recognized him. I was like, I've seen his Vega Matrix videos from back in the day, him cruising videos, pushing the veganics and stuff. But I've been working with him for I think about 5 years now, and we'll cruise to all these places and meet these really great people, and it's awesome.
We're huge Cushman fans on the show. We love his podcast. We're doing podcasts because of people like Kyle. So
yeah. Well, we'll do these events, and everybody, they're like, I've had posters of you, Kyle Cushman, on my garage since
on their ceiling in their bedroom above their beds,
and we'll do these road trips and set up these interviews and stuff. And it's awesome.
Yeah. Kyle's a great guy. We had him on the show, and he is.
I was here too. I was in the wings watching.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I mean, I love when people are passionate about cannabis, because I'm passionate about cannabis. And I love that it's just contagious. And when you can share that experience with people, especially people like Kyle, he rubs off on you. And, It's like whether it was his articles in High Times, Ed Rosenthal's another one too. He's a character. And Kyle is another character. And it's like they've helped build this cannabis world that we all get to experience. And I love that about these guys. And, Kyle Cushman's had the name Kyle Cushman for, I think, 30 years.
34 years as he's got it on his Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's like these guys help make the world a better place because I believe cannabis makes the world a better place.
Yeah, it's. I think the only other time I've been up to Oakland, we interviewed Ed Rosenthal, and you see these. I've had their books. I've read about them. I've seen them for years.
Yeah, Ed's my crazy uncle, by the way.
Yeah,
like, literally. Yeah, Ed's a character. I love the guy.
Yeah, him and Jane. Yeah, I've seen him a few times too, and that's what I've been liking about going to MJ BizCon. I see all these familiar faces, catch people in the halls. It's a fun time.
So what's your favorite event? Yeah, I mean, you talk about MJ, but what, as far as events, you've been able to go to a lot of them.
Let's see. Well, we did Alt Pro in Florida. They're trying to get it pushed through to go legal, but it was a lot of those Delta 9 and stuff, but a lot of great people there. We did, what was the event in Oklahoma? CannaCon, I think. And, so I haven't been to too many. I think we're scheduled to go to Spanibus next year.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be included on that one. So, I mean, getting out of the country.
I don't want to let Kyle down, but he's not getting podcast of the year.
Yeah, you can arm wrestle for it.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair for him. But we got to have something that's more fair. Like strain name. We got who knows more names. That would be a fair one. But no, Kyle's amazing. His podcast is amazing. The whole crew you guys have is amazing.
Yeah, well, Matt's kind of a one-man band. This guy's running around. You should see him on some of these shoots. He'll be in the dirt on his stomach getting these shots. He's got drones in the air. He's running around him holding up light screens. Yeah. So he puts out some good videos.
Well, he's got a shotgun in his house, so you don't want to mess with him
either. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he'll make me look good on videos sometimes, so he's good. Huh?
Well, that's the beauty of what people like Matt and Ryan, they're able to make us look better than we are most of the time.
Yeah.
But I feel like the editing, it's so technical to do right.
Right.
And there's so many, I mean, people see what they see this one finished product, but there's so many things and so many people that it takes to get there, and it's like not only the stories that we have that took lifetimes to build that we're talking about on our show, but like the editing, the lighting, the sound. Like I didn't realize going in, it's like writing a book. I had no idea what it was like to write a book until I did it. But until I did a podcast, I had no idea how important lighting was or sound was.
Well, you can't look at a production the same once you saw the behind the scenes.
Even a movie, like I don't look at movies the same, and it's like you have more of an appreciation after you've experienced it from the inside, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I did theater for a few years, stage management. We would set up lights, and the whole point of that is to go unnoticed, right? Like you don't want them to be aware of what you're doing because it's part of the show,
right?
And so when you see us on screen here, and then you look over and you got cameras and lights everywhere. You got like the control center with all the TV monitors and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's beyond me. I'm more comfortable, filling up a pot of dirt and talking about some plants. But these guys, that's a that's a totally different world
for sure. Well, and it's just as important as every other component of the cannabis industry. All these things. Yeah. It's like we're all part of this bigger picture and making this thing amazing.
Right. Yeah, it's I mean, being able to share that with people, because getting out on the farm and up in the mountains and stuff, people are doing it. You're not able to see them. You're not able to hear their stories. So you got people like Matt and Ryan running out into those hills, getting their interviews and being able to see exactly what they're doing. And it is encouraging for people because, you'd be surprised at how many people are starting out cold. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know which route they should go. So getting this information out, encouraging people, hearing people's stories, hearing people like Rick DeLisi and what he went through. Those are important stories that need to be told.
For sure. So if you had one piece of advice for your younger self, what would that one piece be?
One piece of advice. Well, I think
the pre-Jehovah Witness.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got out of that as soon as I could.
Yeah.
I think being tied to the status quo, you get into a career and the path of life rarely leaves you at that same place. So it's really easy to get tied in and sentimental to where you are at that particular moment, maybe walking away from a job and mourning it and trying to figure out what's going to happen next. But for everybody, you'll hear this time and time again. It ends up falling into place. And if there's something that you're passionate about, something that you like, and if you pursue that with enough time, you get all these pieces all these dominoes that fall, and you'll find yourself sitting across the table from James Loud giving an interview.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah, it is wild.
Nice. Yeah, this whole experience we call life is pretty wild and pretty amazing, and there's so many blessings to be had just across the board.
Indeed.
So if people want to know more about Parker Curtis and Homegrown, where can they go?
So my Instagram is Parker Curtis 420, and our website with Homegrown Cannabis, it's homegrowncannabis.com, and you can find all of our stuff there. We're showing people how to grow. We're giving advice on what kind of seeds are best for your area. And I think at this point, our company Instagram was taken down. So Nate Hammer 420 is where he posts a lot of our content as well.
And then one last question. What's your favorite thing to smoke?
Oh, I used to dab it up all the time, but now it's mostly joints. It was blunts, but I like putting flame to flower. I don't do the vapes or
DMT,
the dabs.
whatever, it's okay.
I did that a couple of times, and the last time it scared the shit out of me.
Yeah. You can go down a rabbit hole that you don't want to go back to, for sure.
Yeah, it was like that movie Stargate where you just like step through. It was a wild
I've been
one.
there.
Yeah.
I still enjoy that, but
yeah, well, try this out and let me know how it goes. Yeah, you can plant this, and probably in 5 to 7 years, you'll have some big pieces to cut off.
Nice. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I
Thank
look
you
forward to having you guys on again, coming down to visit you guys at your studio down there, smoking some homegrown that you guys got.
All right. Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
For sure. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe down below.
Yeah. So, pleasure having me on. It was fun talking.
Yeah, dude. No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we still have 2 hours left, dude, or 3. I mean, I'm hungry, but not that hungry.
Hey, it's a pleasure having me on.
Yeah. Let's wrap it like that. Done. Good job, guys.